Imagine the clock is inching toward midnight. You are sitting on the living room floor surrounded by an Allen wrench, a crumpled set of assembly instructions, and two leftover screws that definitely belong somewhere. In front of you stands the bookshelf you just spent the last 3 hours building from scratch. It leans slightly to the left. One cabinet door doesn't close all the way. And when you tap the top corner, the entire structure wobbles in a slightly unsettling way. Now imagine someone walks into the room and places an identical bookshelf right next to yours, only theirs is perfectly straight, rock solid, and flawlessly assembled by a professional. Yet if someone asked which bookshelf you wanted to keep a deep part of, you would cling to your crooked, wobbly creation. You feel like it is worth more something to be proud of. Not because it is objectively better, but because that perfect shelf is just an object. Your wonky shelf holds 3 hours of your actual life. Why does our own physical labor have the power to alter the value of an object, even when outsiders see nothing but the technical flaws we are actively trying to ignore? To understand this paradox, you have to realize that every object in the world is judged by two completely different valuation systems. The first is market value. When an outsider looks at your DIY chair or bookshelf, they only evaluate the final result, the quality of the wood, its structural durability, how clean the finish looks, and what it would cost to fix the remaining flaws. They look at the object through the cold, objective eyes of a consumer. The second system is creator value. When you look at the bookshelf you built with your own 2 hands, you don't just see a piece of furniture. You see the time you invested. You remember the frustration of step 5, the irritation of tightening the wrong screw and having to take it all apart, and above all, the explosive surge of pride when you finally stood it upright. An outsider sees a bookshelf. The creator sees a bookshelf and the entire story of how it came to exist. The IKEA effect doesn't make a product objectively better. It simply embeds vastly more personal information into it for the person who made it. However, in cognitive psychology, to truly understand the IKEA effect, we have to separate it from 3 similar mental traps. First is the endowment effect, demanding a higher price for an object simply because you already own it. Second is the customization effect of an object, because you got to pick the exact color, shape, or features to match your personal taste. And third is the sunk cost fallacy, refusing to walk away from a failing project because you regret the massive amount of money or time you already poured into it. The IKEA effect is a completely independent mechanism. You value a product more highly solely because you participated in building or assembling it. In the original foundational studies, researchers intentionally used standardized IKEA storage boxes and identical Lego sets, completely stripping away the ability to customize colors or designs. This allowed them to isolate and prove that the added value doesn't come from personal taste. It comes directly from the act of labor itself. So how does our physical labor seep into an object's value, and why is that added value a double-edged sword? On a small scale in our daily lives, the IKEA effect is completely harmless and brings us genuine joy. A home-cooked meal always tastes a little richer. A plant you propagated from a cutting becomes an irreplaceable friend. A desk you repaired yourself brings a quiet sense of accomplishment every day. But when this psychological mechanism steps into the professional world, it starts creating dangerous blind spots. A homeowner overprices their house by tens of thousands of dollars simply because they value the weekends they spent tiling the bathroom floor. A software designer fiercely defends a clunky, confusing user interface just because they pulled all-nighters coding it from scratch. An executive board rejects a superior, external technology, choosing to stick with a mediocre internal system due to not invented here syndrome. When a product becomes physical proof of your effort and competence, any criticism aimed at that product is instantly felt by the brain as a personal attack on the creator. So what pieces of scientific evidence have researchers gathered to decode this fascinating phenomenon? Evidence number 1. Simply assembling a basic box increases a person's willingness to pay. In a classic experiment, researchers divided college students into 2 groups. The first group assembled a standard black IKEA storage box from scratch. The second group simply inspected an identical box that was already put together. When asked to bid real money on how much they would pay to keep the box, the non-builders offered an average of about 48 cents. The builders, on the other hand, were willing to pay 78 cents, a 63% increase in valuation in this specific study. The difference didn't come from quality, color, or function. It came from the fact that one group took part in transforming disconnected parts into a complete form. Evidence number 2. Amateurs price their own creations on par with experts. In a study on paper, origami novices were taught how to fold a paper frog or crane. Afterward, they were asked to price their own amateur creations. The results surprised observers. The creators priced their lumpy, uneven paper birds significantly higher than what buyers were willing to pay. In fact, the price tag they slapped on their own work came remarkably close to the market value of exquisite origami made by professional artists. The creators had 2 pieces of information in their heads: what the finished product looked like and how hard it was to fold it. They unconsciously added their own struggle to the price tag, while buyers only cared about the shape of the paper bird. You price the journey while the world prices the result. Evidence number 3. If you build it and then have to unbuild it, the added value instantly evaporates. To test whether people love an object because they touched it or because they actually created it, scientists ran a Lego experiment. One group assembled a model and kept the final result. Another group assembled the exact same model, but the moment they clicked the final brick into place, they were told to take the entire thing apart piece by piece. The results showed that the builders who had to disassemble their work priced the pile of loose bricks way lower than those who kept the finished model, even though they spent the exact same amount of time and effort. This reveals a subtle truth: we don't just attach to the hard work itself. We attach to the tangible outcome standing there to prove our work was a success. Evidence number 4. Unfinished labor never generates complete love. Another experiment divided participants assembling an IKEA box into 2 groups. Group 1 was allowed to finish the box 100%. Group 2 did most of the hard work, but was told to stop with just a few steps remaining, leaving the box incomplete. When asked to value the product, the liking and willingness to pay of Group 2 plummeted. They spent the time, read the instructions, and broke a sweat. But they missed out on the critical psychological payoff, the moment of exhaling and saying, "Done." Labor creates physical cost, but only completion has the power to convert that cost into pride. And evidence number 5. This is a deep-seated human trait that appears as early as age 5. A massive meta-analysis pooling data from over 5,000 participants across dozens of studies confirmed that the IKEA effect is a robust psychological phenomenon across different products and cultures. Researchers even discovered that the tendency to favor our own creations emerges strongly in children around 5 to 6 years old. At this age, simple ownership doesn't explain why a child clings to a lumpy clay toy they made over a much prettier store-bought one. From early childhood, our brains learn to use self-made objects as building blocks to construct our self-concept. I made this, which means I am a capable person. But here we have to confront a critical twist. We often summarize this effect with a simple phrase: the harder you work, the more you love the result. But that is false. If a task is designed to be so frustrating and overwhelming that you hit a brick wall for 7 hours and fail, or if the table you just built collapses the first time you put a book on it, all that exhausted labor will not turn into love. It will turn into intense resentment and frustration. Researchers warn that labor only translates into added value when it ends in perceived success. You don't love the IKEA table because it gave you a backache. You love it because that backache ended in an object standing on your floor, smiling back at you and saying, "You conquered this challenge." So beneath our behaviors, What is the exact mechanism our brain uses to turn an object into part of our identity? This psychological shift unfolds across a 5-step chain reaction. Step 1 is investment. You pour time, attention, and physical energy into an inanimate object. Step 2 is agency. You watch your hands directly cause a tangible change in the real world. 2 pieces of wood locking together, a clean line of code running, a meal taking shape. You are no longer a passive observer. You are the cause of that reality. Step 3 is completion. The object shifts from a task I have to do to an achievement I conquered. Psychology calls this the need for effectance, our deep human craving to feel capable of impacting and controlling our environment. Step 4 is identity integration. The object is no longer outside of you. It becomes an invisible trophy, confirming your patience, dexterity, taste, and problem-solving skills. And step 5 is the valuation gap. You evaluate the object using the full story of your personal competence, while the market evaluates it using wood and screws. This brings us to a profound truth about the meaning of labor in the modern world. Why are modern people so obsessed with gardening, baking bread, pottery, or DIY furniture assembly? Because the vast majority of modern work has lost its tangibility. You can sit in front of a screen for 8 hours a day, answering hundreds of emails, moving data back and forth between departments, sitting through endless meetings, or fixing a software bug deep in a server that a normal user will never see. At the end of the day, you walk out of the office feeling exhausted, but you can't point to a single physical object in the world and say, "This morning that didn't exist. Now it exists because of my hands." A self-made object provides that exact priceless proof. It pulls your competence out of the abstract and into the physical world, turning it into something you can see, touch, use daily, and proudly show off to others. We don't just love the things we make. We love the version of ourselves, proven by making them. In our current tech era, the IKEA Effect offers vital lessons for product design and teamwork. If you are a builder or designer, the golden rule is simple. Don't just hand people a passive finished result. Give them a meaningful role in creating it. That is why home-delivered meal kits always require you to sear the meat and make the final sauce yourself. It is the secret behind why sandbox games like Minecraft or open-source software communities build such fierce loyalty. Even in today's artificial intelligence world, an image or article generated by AI with a single click often feels hollow and alien. But when users actively steer the direction, constantly prompt, tweak every sentence, and weave their personal ideas into the workflow with AI, that feeling of, "this is my work," explodes, creating a significantly stronger cognitive bond. But at the same time, we have to stay vigilant against the dark side of the IKEA effect at work. Next time you find yourself fiercely defending an idea, an ad campaign, or a block of code you wrote during a tense meeting, pause for 1 second and ask yourself, am I evaluating the objective quality of this solution? Or am I just reflexively defending the proof of my own competence? To avoid that trap, smart teams use independent filters, asking people outside the project to review the results, stripping away author names during peer reviews, and asking one brutal question. If a competitor came up with this idea, would I still think it's brilliant? We will never truly hate that wonky bookshelf standing in our living room, and those 2 leftover screws on the floor won't diminish our pride one bit. Because the IKEA effect teaches us that the highest value of an object doesn't lie in the cold perfection of its finish or the precision of its right angles. The IKEA effect begins the exact moment an object stops answering the question, "Is it good?" and starts answering a much more sacred question, "Did I do that?"